Do you want me to say something controversial? I like VAR. I like living in a world where they can actually review the decisions. I think the way that it's been implemented has obviously sucked. But I think the idea that you can go back and look at something on video in the same way that millions or in the World Cup billions of people can pretty immediately tell what's happening is just a good thing for the sport. But it also, because of the way VAR works, provides the opportunity for corruption. Or I don't even know if this is corruption. It's more just absolute, pure, unfiltered, just insanity. I mean, like tomfoolery, snake oil salesman level nonsense. And it's happening in the Croatian League. And essentially what this boils down to is in the Croatian League, and I knew nothing about this. Somebody posted about it on Reddit, and I chased down the rabbit hole, right? So in the Croatian League, there is a controversy going on that has to do with the audio in the VAR room itself. And the fact that the head of officiating may have not presented the right audio. It'll all make sense. It barely makes sense to me. So we're going to be kind of piecing the rest of this together. The controversy centers around VAR tapes that had been leaked, and the leaked VAR tapes actually contradicting what had been said by the head of officials in Croatia, which is obviously a bit of an issue, especially when some particularly controversial penalties have been happening. Like, imagine if after like a controversial call is made in favor of Manchester United, the head of all officials sits down and makes a statement and says, this is why that decision was made. And actually, and this is where things get weird, plays the VAR audio to an audience to say, look, this is how they came to the decision, and really talked their way through it and everything. And then 6 months later, tapes come out of the actual VAR recording, and they sound completely different, and the decision was made completely differently and in a much more chaotic fashion and not nearly as well. That's literally what is happening in Croatia right now. And the protagonist is a guy named Bruno Maric. He was, up until a very short time ago, the head of officials in Croatia. And there had been some controversial penalty calls, particularly in a match between Osijek and Dinamo Zagreb. Osijek had let me make sure I get this right? Osijek had a 2-0 lead in the 85th minute, ended up losing to Dinamo Zagreb 3-2. And in that huge comeback, very late, there were 2 penalty calls that went the way of Dinamo Zagreb. And that was essentially the pot boiling over. Like when you're trying to make pasta, but forget you put the pot on the stove and it just, all of a sudden it hits the table and you go, right, like, oh, wait, I have to go actually put the pasta in the pot of water. Well, that is what Bruno Maric believed, that this moment was his. It was his time to solve this issue, right? As I imagine many officials and heads of officiating have been in this position before, and they have decided that they didn't want to actually address the public because their job was to just do their job the best that they could. But this guy, he decided that he should address the public. I don't necessarily think that's an inherently bad thing. Could bring more unwanted attention to the officials, right? But he wanted to handle the controversy that had been brewing. And his decision was to come out and hold what was described by Index HR, which is like a kind of a tabloidy newspaper in Croatia, according to, well, like Google. I don't know. I don't speak Croatian, so we're doing the best that we can here. Almost all of the source material for this is literally in Croatian, so I should have hired a Croatian translator from Fiverr, but time is of the essence. We're using Google Chrome to translate it. But he said in what they described as an extraordinary press conference, for the first time, the Commission of Football Referees is going public in this way, precisely to show that transparency is our goal and that everything we do is always available. We're going to come back to his favorite talking points later, right? This dude sounds like somebody's given him a script and he can't go off it, especially when decisions for matches arouse great interest. Yesterday's match, which aroused great interest to the Croatian sports public, that was the match between Dinamo and Osijek, was, as you saw, was intriguing. However, it was intriguing. I don't want any referee ever describing a situation as intriguing. There's just something implicit in that word that not only makes me think of Crusader Kings and, murdering members of my own family, which is something that you do in Crusader Kings before you report me. Crusader Kings, it's a video game. FBI, leave me alone. It's a game. There's an intrigue attribute in the game. but I don't want my officials to have high intrigue attribute. That's, hoodwinking and bamboozling your opposition. We don't want that. We don't want that. All I want to do in Crusader Kings is make my horse the Chancellor. That's all I want to do. Glitter hoof for life. Despite the fact that he described the situation as intriguing, he said the Commission of Football Referees clearly analyzed all situations, and I will present you the opinions of the referees regarding the decisions. So that, it would turn out, was at least very good evidence, a gigantic, hilarious lie. But we didn't know that at the time. Well, I mean, I didn't know this was going on at all when this was happening. This was a little while ago, but Bruno Maric, he had a plan for how to handle this situation. This was the plan. He said, communication is extremely important. We ask that the public be informed in the correct way and that you allow us to show what interests the Croatian public and to show how we clearly make decisions and so on and so forth. He blabbers about for a very long time. And after he continues to blabber, he makes what is described as a revolutionary move that Maric made in the incident. It was the only time in history the conversation between the referees and the VAR room was revealed to the public in Croatia. He released the tapes from the VAR room. Just actually released them, right? They had two different participating people, some guy named Bebek and Hrvoje Radic, who were the senior and assistant VAR referees, and they spoke clearly, meaningfully, calmly, and it seemed professional. And I actually love the way this article was written because they kind of draw you into what I've already almost spoiled, and that the fact that this was almost a little too calm, a little too professional, and a little too clear to be real. Wake up, sheeple. It's time to put your tinfoil hats on. That's why I'm dressed like Little Red Riding Hood today. I'm trying to hide my tinfoil hat from the public, but it's here. No, there's nothing on my head. But you really do need to, get your ham radios out because we're about to get wild. At first, this Maric guy was like, I just gave you guys unprecedented access. It's amazing how amazing our officials are, right? They're amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Look at their professionalism and their calmness. The main issue that they start to pick at, though, is that Mario Zibets, who is the actual referee in the match, you don't hear on the recording. And they kind of needle you with that fact, that you don't hear Mario Zibets on the record. You just hear the dudes in the VAR room, which was the first sign that something was amiss. The huge issue for this power move by Maric to try and settle public unrest is that 6 months later, the leaks started to happen. The leaks started to come out with actual VAR recordings from a lot of matches, but one in particular was very interesting. It was one that at least sounded like the actual VAR conversation from the Dinamo Zagreb and Osijek match around one of the penalties in particular that was highly debatable. It had to do with a handball on the edge of the box that a lot of people didn't actually think was in the penalty area, essentially. And obviously the recordings are in Croatian, so I can't necessarily listen to them and discern what they're talking about, but the recordings included yelling, cursing, stress, and chaos, which is a far cry from how amazing and calm and professional all of these guys happen to be not too long ago. And there was one important difference between this recording and the other recording that had previously been released from the same match. And that difference was the fact that the actual referee from the match is also heard in this chaotic, curse-filled VAR meeting with the two people in the VAR room. You can hear all three of them, Radic, Bebek, and Zibets. This created a conundrum in a situation where there were two recordings and one that happened to look a lot more realistic that was contradicting what the head of officiating was saying. And that's when the HNS, which is essentially the Croatian Football Federation, came out and actually admitted that the previous recording was fake, which is crazy. The Federation came out and admitted that the previous recording was fake, but their argument was actually a fairly solid one. What they said is that they recorded it again after the match, like a day after the match, because it's actually illegal according to FIFA rules to release the actual recording from the VAR room at the time. Which, of course, if that was something that was illegal according to FIFA, then why would you pretend to do it in the first place? Because then it's confirmable that if you were actually doing it, you would be breaking one of the lesser-known FIFA rules just on the spot. The obvious issue here is that the head of Croatian officiating did not make it clear at all that the recording was fake and instead continued to espouse and compliment the professionalism and calmness of all the people involved. Although it does make a lot of sense that the one that they recorded the next day was just the two dudes in the actual room. But what's particularly hilarious is they actually re-recorded the referee on the field and re-recorded the people in the room doing the same actions so that they could show a full video at the press conference of like, this was the entire series of events. They turned the entire officiating crew into actors. I remind you, this Maric guy said this press conference served exclusively to draw the attention of the Croatian public to the fact that we are not hiding anything and that we are transparent and that we do not want anyone to question the competition system or the work of the Commission of Football Referees or referees in the playing field with fabricated and manipulated recordings. Except that wasn't Maric's press conference before the new recordings came out. That was actually Maric's press conference after the new recordings came out. And he is suggesting that they are fabricated and manipulative recordings, which is insane considering it is also reported that the Croatian Football Federation came out and said, yeah, we re-recorded those because we would have broken FIFA rules if we released the actual ones. Now your head of officiating is talking about transparency at the exact same time that he actually he wrote and produced and directed an entire film entitled Croatian VAR Room during Osijek v Dinamo. But unfortunately for him, that press conference was before we knew that he had directed, the video elements of that aspect. The initial statement by the Croatian FA had to do with they just re-recorded it for posterity, and then that's the recording they used. So it wasn't nearly as offensive as manipulating the entire video that was presented at the original press conference to make it seem like it was the actual VAR recording, which is just clearly to manipulate people. Let me see if I can get this for you. Simulated the work of the VAR room on the video played by Maric. They simulated it. They acted it. More precisely, that after the game, they filmed themselves judging that it was a penalty for Dinamo. I mean, I guess it is a pretty easy acting gig when you end up playing yourself. But this guy ended up resigning only a few days after he held this incredibly defiant press conference. And it's actually flipped so far in the other direction that while I was looking up stuff about him, even though he's no longer the head of Croatian referees, he has filed for protection with the police due to threats. Obviously, that's not okay either. This guy just did a terrible job of leading the referees. He doesn't deserve that kind of treatment. But look, all right, fabricating a fake VAR conversation. Top 5 most insane things I've heard this year. I don't even understand how you come up with that. It's got to be some sort of, you're sitting in a dark room and you go, actually, there might be another solution to get them all off our back and make you guys look good. Follow me. Then you just take them to a recording studio and you're like, check this out, dude. You press this button, you sound like Megatron. That was the wrong button, but you get the point. The guy resigned, and never trust VAR audio. It could be fake. Bye. Tinfoil hats, people. Ham radios.